Welcome to Javel Stories. Before we continue with the story, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell to always get notified for upcoming stories, and also share the story with loved ones and friends. Thank you very much. The golden rays of the setting sun bathed the small coastal town of Brighton in a warm glow as the sea breeze carried the scent of salt and wildflowers through the air. The park, nestled in the heart of the town, was alive with laughter and joy. Children dashed around the fountain, their giggles ringing like bells, while couples strolled hand in hand, exchanging soft words that melted into the hum of nature. Lily sat alone on a weathered wooden bench beneath an old oak tree, her sketchpad balanced on her lap. Her pencil moved swiftly across the page, capturing the life around her with a precision born from hours of practice. Her dark, shoulder-length hair framed her face, falling over her eyes in soft waves as she leaned forward, lost in her art. She wore a simple floral dress that swayed gently in the breeze, and on her wrist was a charm bracelet, each tiny trinket representing a story she never told anyone. Her world was silent, but peaceful until the sudden bark of a dog shattered the tranquility. Startled, Lily looked up just in time to see her dog, a small, scruffy terrier named Max, bolt from her side. Her heart lurched as Max's leash slipped from her grasp, and the little dog darted across the park, weaving through people and picnic blankets with frantic energy. "Max!" she called, her voice trembling with panic. Her hands clutched her sketchpad, and for a moment she froze, unsure of what to do. That's when she saw him. A boy, not much older than herself, was racing after Max. His skateboard clattered to the ground as he sprinted barefoot across the grass, his messy brown hair catching the sunlight. His face was alive with determination, and a faint smile played on his lips, as though the chase was just another adventure in his endless list of escapades. Within moments, he crouched low and scooped Max into his arms, expertly dodging an elderly couple's picnic setup. The terrier barked in protest, but the boy held him firmly, his touch gentle yet secure. Lily watched, awestruck, as he jogged back toward her, his grin widening with every step. "Here you go," he said, his voice rich with amusement as he extended Max toward her. His hazel eyes sparkled like flecks of gold against the fading sunlight. Lily stood, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "Thank you," she murmured, taking Max from his hands. "He's usually not like this. I don't know what got into him." The boy shrugged, still smiling. "Dogs just want to be free sometimes. Can't blame him." She laughed softly, clutching Max to her chest. "Still, you didn't have to chase after him. That was really kind of you." "Well," he said, leaning against the bench and crossing his arms, "I figured someone as focused as you might not notice he was gone until he reached the next town over." Lily blinked, caught off guard by his teasing. "Focused?" she asked, tilting her head. He nodded toward her sketchpad. "You looked like you were drawing the meaning of life or something. What were you working on?" Her fingers tightened around the edges of the pad, her instinct to shield her art from prying eyes kicking in. But there was something disarming about his easy demeanor, something that made her feel like it was okay to share. Slowly, she opened the sketchpad to the page she'd been working on, a pencil sketch of the park, complete with the fountain, the children, and even a rough outline of the oak tree. The boy leaned closer, his eyes scanning the page with genuine admiration. "Wow," he said softly. "That's incredible. You drew all that just now." She nodded, biting her lip. "It's just a hobby," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hobby? Nah, this is talent," he insisted, his tone sincere. "I couldn't draw a straight line with a ruler if my life depended on it." His compliment warmed her cheeks, and she found herself smiling despite her usual shyness. "Thank you," she said again, her voice steadier this time. "Ethan," he said, holding out his hand. "Lily," she replied, hesitating only briefly before shaking his hand. His grip was firm, his palm warm against hers. They stood there for a moment, the park fading into the background as they exchanged small, uncertain smiles. Max barked again, breaking the spell, and Lily glanced down, realizing she was still holding Ethan's hand. "Sorry," she said quickly, pulling away. "Don't be," he replied, unfazed. So, Lily, do you come here often? She chuckled, the cliché question sounding oddly charming coming from him. I guess I do. It's quiet, and I like the scenery. Well, maybe I'll see you around, Ethan said, stepping back and picking up his skateboard. In case Max decides he needs another adventure. Lily laughed, and for the first time in a long while it felt genuine and light. Maybe. As Ethan skated away, his silhouette fading into the orange horizon, Lily sat back down on the bench, her heart unexpectedly lighter. She looked down at her sketchpad and added a new detail to the scene, a figure with messy hair and a skateboard, chasing after a little dog. Days passed, but Ethan remained on Lily's mind. She found herself glancing at the park bench more often than usual, hoping to catch a glimpse of the boy who had chased after Max. It wasn't like her to think about someone she'd just met, but something about his carefree smile and easy confidence lingered, refusing to fade. One Saturday afternoon, Lily decided to visit the cafe near the park. It was a cozy little spot with soft yellow walls, mismatched furniture, and the comforting smell of freshly brewed coffee. She settled into her usual corner table, pulling out her sketchpad. She began sketching the cafe's interior, her pencil tracing the outlines of the barista's apron and the intricate pattern of the vintage teacups on display. The sound of the bell above the door chimed, and she glanced up, her heart skipping a beat. Ethan strolled in, his skateboard tucked under one arm, his hair even messier than she remembered. He scanned the room, his eyes landing on her almost immediately. A grin spread across his face as he made his way over. Well, well, he said, pulling out the chair across from her without waiting for an invitation. If it isn't the girl who draws the meaning of life. Lily blinked, caught off guard by his sudden appearance. Ethan, she said, her tone a mix of surprise and amusement. What are you doing here? Grabbing coffee, obviously, he replied, leaning back in the chair. But finding you here? Bonus points. She rolled her eyes, but her lips twitched into a smile. Do you always invade people's tables like this? Only when they look like they could use some company, he said, gesturing to the empty chairs around her. And I was right, wasn't I? Lily shook her head, trying to hide her smile. You're something else. So, what are you working on this time? He asked, nodding toward her sketchpad. She hesitated for a moment before flipping the page to show him her latest drawing, a detailed sketch of the cafe, complete with the tiny plants on the windowsill and the swirling steam rising from a coffee cup. Wow, Ethan said, leaning forward to study the page. You've got an eye for detail. I feel like I could step into that drawing. Thanks, Lily said softly, her cheeks warming under his praise. He began, his tone more serious now. You should do something with this talent. Like, I don't know, art school or something. Lily laughed, but it was a dry, humorless sound. Art school costs money, and I'm barely making enough to get by, as it is. Ethan frowned, resting his chin on his hand. That sucks. But, hey, just because it's hard doesn't mean it's impossible, right? Right, she murmured, though she didn't sound convinced. There was a moment of silence between them, filled only by the soft hum of the cafe. Then Ethan spoke again, his voice lighter. All right, enough serious talk. Let's make a deal. A deal? Lily raised an eyebrow. Yeah. Every time you finish a drawing, you show it to me, he said, his grin returning. In return, I don't know, buy you coffee or something. Sound good? Lily laughed, the sound genuine this time. That's the worst deal I've ever heard. Is that a no? She shook her head, still smiling. Fine. Deal. Ethan leaned back, satisfied. Cool. Guess I'll be seeing a lot more of you then. Over the next few weeks, Ethan and Lily fell into an easy routine. They would meet at the cafe, the park, or sometimes by the beach. Their friendship grew, in the way all great ones do, effortlessly and naturally. Ethan's infectious energy seemed to draw Lily out of her shell, while her quiet strength and thoughtfulness grounded him in ways he didn't expect. One crisp autumn evening, they sat on the edge of the boardwalk, their feet dangling above the gentle waves. Ethan held a bag of fries he bought from a nearby food truck, offering one to Lily every now and then. You ever think about leaving this town? He asked suddenly, staring out at the horizon. All the time, Lily admitted, her voice soft. But where would I go? And how would I get there? Ethan shrugged, tossing a fry into his mouth. Doesn't matter. As long as you know where you want to be. You'll figure out the rest? Lily turned to look at him, her gaze searching. What about you? Where do you want to be? He grinned, though there was a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Anywhere but here. Lily didn't press further. Instead, she reached for her sketchpad, flipping to a blank page. Hold still, she said, her pencil already moving. What are you doing? Ethan asked, raising an eyebrow. Drawing you, she replied simply. For once, Ethan fell silent, watching as her pencil danced across the page. The world around them seemed to fade, leaving only the sound of the waves and the faint rustle of the wind. When Lily finally finished, she held up the sketch, revealing a striking likeness of Ethan, his messy hair, his crooked smile, and the spark of mischief in his eyes. Wow, he said softly, his usual bravado replaced by genuine awe. You're amazing, you know that? Lily shrugged, trying to downplay the compliment. You're just easy to draw. Sure, Ethan said, smirking. Or maybe I just inspire you. Lily rolled her eyes, but her smile lingered as she tucked the sketchpad back into her bag. As they walked home that night, side by side, neither of them said a word. But in the silence, there was a growing understanding, a connection that neither could explain but both knew was real. Here's the continuation up to Chapter 10, ensuring each chapter remains descriptive, heartfelt, and immersive. Chapter 4, Late-Night Adventures. It started with a text. Ethan had gotten Lily's number by pestering her during one of their cafe hangouts, and now he used it liberally. Ethan, can you sneak out? Lily, wrapped in her blanket, frowned at her phone. It was nearly midnight, and the world outside her window was still. Lily, are you crazy? It's late. Ethan, so. Life's more fun when you're a little crazy. After a moment's hesitation, Lily sighed, pulled on a hoodie, and crept out the door. She found Ethan leaning casually against his old motorcycle, parked under a street lamp near her house. Do you ever sleep? She asked, crossing her arms. Sleep is overrated, he said with a grin. Hop on. Lily hesitated, eyeing the bike nervously. I've never ridden on one of these before. Ethan chuckled, handing her a helmet. There's a first time for everything. Despite her apprehension, Lily climbed onto the bike. As soon as they took off, the cool night air rushed past her face, and her heart raced not with fear, but exhilaration. The town looked different at night, its quiet streets bathed in the silver glow of the moon. Ethan drove them to the edge of a hill overlooking the beach. They sat side by side, watching the waves crash against the shore far below. I knew you'd love it, Ethan said, breaking the silence. Lily nodded, her heart still racing. You were right. Get used to that, he teased, nudging her shoulder. As they laughed under the stars, Lily realized that Ethan had a way of making her feel alive in a way she hadn't before. Chapter 5. The first fight, their easy friendship was bound to hit bumps, and the first came on a rainy afternoon. Ethan had shown up unannounced at Lily's workplace, a small bookstore downtown. He lounged in a corner, flipping through a magazine while Lily stocked shelves. You're going to get me in trouble, she hissed, glancing nervously at her manager. Relax, Ethan said, grinning. I'm just here to see you. But when her manager caught sight of Ethan and scolded her for distracting customers, Lily snapped. After work, she found Ethan waiting outside, leaning against his bike. Why do you always have to show up where you're not supposed to? She demanded, her frustration boiling over. Ethan's grin faltered. I was just trying to make your day better. Well, you didn't, she snapped, her voice sharper than she intended. Ethan's face hardened, and without another word, he climbed onto his bike and drove off, leaving Lily standing in the rain. Lily spent the rest of the evening replaying the argument in her mind. Guilt gnawed at her as she realized she had overreacted. The next day, she found Ethan at the skate park. He was sitting alone, staring at the ground, his skateboard discarded beside him. Hey, she said softly, approaching him. He looked up, his usual spark dimmed. Hey! I'm sorry, she said, sitting down beside him. I didn't mean to snap at you. I was just stressed. Ethan shrugged, but his expression softened. I guess I can be a bit much sometimes. Lily smiled. Maybe, but I like that about you. Ethan's grin returned, and he nudged her playfully. Good, because I'm not changing. They spent the rest of the day skating together, their bond stronger than ever. One evening, As they sat on the beach, Ethan turned to Lily with a serious expression. "What do you want to do with your life?" he asked. Lily stared at the horizon, her pencil hovering over her sketchpad. "I want to be an artist," she said quietly, "but it feels impossible." Ethan shook his head. "Nothing's impossible. You've got the talent. You just need to believe in yourself." "And what about you?" she asked, turning the question back on him. Ethan's grin faltered, and for a moment he looked away. "I don't know," he admitted. "I guess I just want to be free." Lily frowned. "Free from what?" Ethan didn't answer, and the silence that followed was heavy. Ethan's father was waiting for him when he got home that night. "Where have you been?" his father demanded, his voice laced with anger. "Out," Ethan replied, his tone indifferent. "Out with that girl again?" his father snapped. "You need to stop wasting time and focus on your future." "She's not a waste of time," Ethan shot back, his voice rising. His father slammed a fist on the table. "You will ruin your life if you keep this up." Ethan stormed out, his heart pounding. He rode his motorcycle aimlessly through the night, the wind drowning out his father's words. Lily faced her own battles at home. Her mother had always been strict, but her disapproval of Ethan was relentless. "You're spending too much time with that boy," her mother said one evening. "He's nothing but trouble." "He's not," Lily argued, her voice trembling. "You need to focus on your future, not some reckless teenager," her mother insisted. "Lily, clench your fists. Ethan believes in me, even when you don't. He's the only one who makes me feel like I can actually achieve something." Her mother's face softened, but she said nothing more. Lily stormed upstairs, her heart heavy yet defiant. Ethan and Lily met at their usual spot by the beach the next day, both carrying the weight of their respective fights. "I hate fighting with my dad," Ethan admitted, staring at the waves. "But I'm not giving up on us." "Me neither," Lily said, her voice firm. Ethan turned to her, his eyes serious. "Then let's make a promise. No matter what happens, we stick together?" Lily nodded, her heart swelling. "I promise." As they sealed their vow with a hug, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in golden light. For a moment, it felt like nothing could break them. Lily and Ethan began carving out a world of their own, a sanctuary away from their struggles. Late-night rides, hidden spots by the river, and quiet hours in the park became their escape. They didn't need grand gestures or fancy plans. Their time together was enough. One evening, they found an abandoned barn on the edge of town. The structure was weathered, its wooden beams creaking in the breeze, but it had a certain charm. "This could be our hideout," Ethan declared, grinning as he kicked open the rusty door. Inside, the barn was dusty and filled with cobwebs, but Lily saw its potential. "It's perfect," she said, her voice filled with wonder. Over the next few weeks, they transformed the barn into their sanctuary. Lily brought her sketches, pinning them to the walls, while Ethan dragged in old furniture he found at thrift shops. The barn became their haven, a place where they could dream without judgment. As their bond deepened, so did the pressures around them. Ethan's father's demands grew harsher, and Lily's mother's disapproval weighed heavier. Their sanctuary began to feel like a fragile bubble, one that could burst at any moment. One afternoon, during a ride through the countryside, Lily voiced her concerns. "What if this doesn't last?" she asked, her arms wrapped tightly around Ethan's waist. "What do you mean?" Ethan replied, slowing the motorcycle. "What if we get pulled apart by everything?" Ethan parked the bike and turned to face her. "That won't happen," he said firmly. "We won't let it." Lily wanted to believe him, but doubt lingered in her heart. The tension between them finally erupted during a visit to the barn. Ethan, frustrated by his father's constant criticism, snapped when Lily tried to comfort him. "You don't get it, Lily," he shouted, pacing the barn. "You don't have someone breathing down your neck every second, telling you you're a failure." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "You think I don't feel pressure? I have to fight for every dream I have." Their voices echoed in the empty barn, the argument cutting deeper than either expected. Ethan stormed out, leaving Lily alone with her sketches. But guilt gnawed at Ethan as he rode through the night. The barn was their safe space, and he had ruined it. He returned hours later, finding Lily asleep on an old couch, her sketchpad resting on her chest. "I'm sorry," he whispered, kneeling beside her. Lily stirred, her eyes meeting his. I'm sorry too. They sat together in the quiet, their hands entwined as they silently promised to face their struggles together. Ethan's father's demands reached a breaking point when he threatened to sell Ethan's motorcycle if he didn't focus on his studies. You think that bike's going to get you anywhere in life? His father bellowed. It's a waste of time, just like your attitude. Ethan clenched his fists, every fiber of his being resisting the urge to yell back. But, as much as he hated it, he knew he couldn't lose the bike. It was his freedom, his connection to Lily. So, he made a choice. He agreed to take a part-time job at his father's company, sacrificing his evenings to prove he could be responsible. When he told Lily, she was stunned. You're really going to work for him? She asked, her voice laced with disbelief. I have to, Ethan replied. For us. I can't lose the bike, Lily. Her heart ached at the weight he was carrying, but she admired his determination. I'll be here for you, she promised. Inspired by Ethan's sacrifice, Lily decided it was time to take her own leap of faith. She researched art competitions and found one that offered a scholarship to a prestigious art school. I'm going to enter, she told Ethan one evening as they sat in the barn. It's a long shot, but I have to try. Ethan's face lit up with pride. That's my girl, he said, pulling her into a hug. You're going to win. I know it. Lily spent weeks working on her submission, pouring her heart into every stroke of her pencil. Ethan stayed by her side, encouraging her through every moment of doubt. When she finally submitted her entry, they celebrated with a ride through the countryside, the wind carrying their laughter into the night. For the first time in a long while, it felt like they were moving forward together. Days turned into weeks, but the pain of losing Ethan didn't fade for Lily. It only deepened. She replayed the crash in her mind endlessly, hearing his voice over and over. Take my helmet. She blamed herself. What if she had noticed something was wrong earlier? What if she had insisted they turn back? The questions clawed at her, leaving her hollow. Ethan's funeral was a small affair, attended by family and a handful of friends. Lily stood at the back, her knees trembling, clutching the helmet he had given her. As the service ended, she approached his grave, her tears falling silently. I'll never forget you, she whispered, placing her trembling hand on the cold stone. I promise I'll make you proud. Returning to the barn felt impossible, but Lily knew it was something she had to do. It was their place, filled with memories of laughter and whispered dreams. She sat on the old couch, her fingers brushing the sketches pinned to the walls. Her heart ached as she found one of Ethan, his crooked smile, forever captured in her art. Lily pulled out her sketchpad and began drawing again. Each stroke of her pencil was like breathing life into his memory, as though the act of creating could keep him with her. When she finally set the pencil down, she realized she had drawn them together, sitting by the riverbank laughing. It was the first time in weeks she smiled through her tears. One day, a letter arrived from the art competition. Lily hesitated to open it, her hands trembling as she tore the envelope. Congratulations! You have been awarded first place and a scholarship to the Heiress Academy of Art. The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. Ethan had believed in her when she couldn't believe in herself, and now his faith had carried her to this moment. But the thought of leaving the town, leaving the places where Ethan's memory lived, terrified her. Lily found herself at the hill overlooking the beach, the last place Ethan had taken her. She sat in the grass, clutching the helmet, speaking into the silence. I don't know if I can do it, Ethan, she whispered. I don't know if I'm strong enough to leave you behind. The wind stirred around her, and for a moment it felt like he was there. His voice echoed in her mind, full of conviction. You have to chase your dreams, Lily. Promise me. Her tears fell freely, but for the first time, they felt like a release rather than a burden. She took a deep breath, feeling his presence in her heart. I promise, she said aloud. Months later, Lily stood outside the gates of the Heiress Academy of Art, her sketchpad tucked under her arm. The city buzzed around her, alive with energy and possibility. She felt a pang of loss, but she also felt something else, hope. Every step she took, every drawing she created, would be for Ethan. His sacrifice had given her this chance, and she wouldn't waste it. In her dorm room, She pinned one of her favorite sketches to the wall, a drawing of Ethan on his motorcycle, his grin wide, his hair wild in the wind. Beneath it, she wrote the words, "For Ethan, my wings, my anchor, my forever." Years later, when Lily became a celebrated artist, she shared her story with her children and grandchildren. She told them about the boy who had loved her fiercely, who had believed in her when she couldn't, and who had given everything so she could chase her dreams. And every time she looked at the drawing of Ethan, she felt him with her, his voice in her heart reminding her to keep moving forward. The story ended not with loss, but with love, a love so powerful it transcended death, living on in every stroke of her pencil and every beat of her heart.